right, in this presentation, we're going to be talking about observation and assessment. Sorry, I didn't have my mic down. Um, and the importance in the early childhood classroom. Oops. So take a look at this picture. You have 5 seconds after I'm done talking. Pay as close attention to everything that you see. Okay, what do you remember? Take some notes. Think about what you can recall. Are you as good of an observer as you think you are? I'm going to flip back to that slide and see if your list matches the things that you saw or if you left out key details. Okay, I'm going back. All right. So in my memory, I only remembered the red, yellow, and blue chairs. I didn't notice the purple chair. I also didn't notice that the arms of these chairs were different colors than the body of the chair. And in fact, I thought these were Adirondack chairs, and now that I look at them, they're just chairs. Um, do you notice the sign of the guy holding the big sandwich in the background? I just noticed him. So the skill of observing is something you have to build. And some people are just good natural observers and are always aware of their surroundings and what's happening in front of them. And some people have to practice more than others. But this skill is really important for teachers to kind of hone in on and become good at, because it's going to impact all of the work that you do, from guidance and behavior to helping support and grow social emotional skills in young children, and being able to observe for developmental progress. And so as you go through this process of becoming a teacher, if you're here for that purpose, as you go through that process of becoming a teacher, start finding little ways to observe your surroundings, because this will translate into being a good observer of children. Okay, so observation is a foundational skill for teachers, and we observe to understand development. We observe to make theory come alive. So the more that you recognize or understand developmental theory, the more you'll see it right in front of you, right? When I think about that, I think specifically of the zone of proximal development when we're thinking about Vygotsky and Bruner. I think about that. Like, you can see a child struggling through something and needing assistance to being able to eventually do that on their own. And so being able to understand theory, recognize it, and see it happening right before your eyes. And then you need the skill to be able to observe teachers, other teachers, the environments and the activities in a classroom. Observation does not help uh, understand what is happening within a person, right? That's only knowledge that they have. You can't observe or use observation to understand emotions, cognitions, or perceptions. That's all internalized for the person you're observing. The only way you get to know that is by asking them. And we can't infer necessarily what caused a behavior. We can do some observing over a period of time to see what the antecedent is, or that before moment of a behavior, but we can't infer necessarily why or what caused the child to act a certain way. We can ask them, but they might not even know. We can observe for the antecedent, the before. That's all. And why do we observe as early childhood educators? Well, we observe to improve our teaching, to understand our own biases. I had a horrible bias, y'all, it was my very first job, and I was working in a childcare setting, and I had children between the ages of 3 and 8 in my classroom. So I had, during the day, I had children 3 to age 5, and then after school time, I had all of the school age children as well. And I had a student who joined my classroom at the age of 4, and her parents had already gone through the process of having her identify with disabilities, and she had a pretty significant um, articulation errors. Like, I couldn't understand what she was saying half of the time, but she was really good at gestures and communicating through sign, and using all the skills that she could to communicate her needs, but she would still get super frustrated. And in my young 18, 19-year-old brain, I associated articulation errors with intellectual development. And oh my gosh, did that kid prove me wrong. And that was a bias that I had. I had a bias that children who had speech impediments, specifically articulation errors, had low cognition. No, no, it was so wrong. And I was very fortunate at that center to work very closely with the itinerant special education teacher and the speech language pathologist. And they put me in my place and they taught me how to observe this child and how to really understand her capabilities. And she was incredibly intelligent. She just had articulation errors. And we don't know, honestly, it's been more than 20 years and I don't recall. My gosh, I just said that out loud. I do not recall if it was, my husband's laughing at me. I don't recall if it was because she had some hearing issues when she was a baby, or if there were some underlying medical issues that caused some hearing delay. I'm not sure, but she was on track with her hearing by then, and but I know that sometimes hearing and environment can all play a role in articulation. So I just didn't know, but that cleared up one of my biases once I really got to observe her and understand what her ability. Holy cow, was I wrong? We also observe to improve our objectivity, and something we'll talk about a little bit further, especially when we get to the curriculum part of this module, is to improve our objectivity. And so we have to understand the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. And when we observe children, sometimes we observe subjectively. We think we know, right? We think we know what's going on. Or we use words in our observation writing that are subjective. Oh, Johnny's a good little boy. Well, that's not an observation. That's subjective. What's good? What does that mean? And so we observe to improve our objectivity, to only look for the facts, to only base how we view children based on their words, actions, and behaviors. We observe to construct a theory. We want to understand what's happening with a child. We want to understand their developmental progressions. We observe to help parents. Sometimes parents come to us with an issue or a concern. I don't understand why my toddler isn't self-feeding yet. I don't understand why my 3-year-old can't pedal a tricycle. I don't understand why my 8-year-old is still reading at a kindergarten level. So we observe to understand those patterns and to help parents. We use assessment tools as a way to document our observations. As we document our observations, we use the assessment tools to make sense of a child's overall progress and development. And we look at those observations to determine developmental progress. We observe because we wonder why, like, right? We want to solve a problem. Again, like, why isn't my 3-year-old pedaling a tricycle yet? Well, let's observe and find out. What experiences does the child have at home? What's keeping the child from hopping on a tricycle during recess time? Let's find out. And we observe to assess our program and our environment. Sometimes other people will come into our program and observe us. They'll observe our teaching practices, our interactions with young children, our environment, not only for health and safety, but for developmental appropriateness. And all of that comes together to just make us better teachers. All right, so what might we observe in an educational setting? Well, I'm going to move this down, sorry. We observe for developmental objectives. So activities that promote specific aspects of physical, intellectual, emotional, or social development. We're observing for development. We might observe for content objectives, and this includes subject matter, math, science, literacy, social studies, the arts, technology. We might be observing for content-specific subject matter, and activities that support or promote those specific content areas. And then we might observe for behavioral objectives, right? When we're thinking about a child's social or emotional development, maybe we're observing for that growth. It's generally used for individual children, and it specifies exactly what the child is expected to master. I do not like the word master or mastery because it kind of implies completion, but in development, do we ever fully complete? Development is continual and ongoing throughout our lifespan, but let's maybe say instead anticipated milestones, right? Oops. And then this video is already in Canvas for you, and it's 3 examples of planned observation. So please take good notes as you watch. You're observing a Montessori, was this the Montessori classroom? No, this is the Eastern Connecticut University. If you ever just are interested in a specific topic um, related to early childhood education, Eastern Connecticut University has a cache of videos that you can watch. Their educational, their observational. They're wonderful, and I use their videos in quite a few of my classes. It's a wonderful resource. If you're a director, a center director, or a trainer, or a mentor teacher, you could use these videos to support your teachers. All right, so observation in the EC classroom. So you really need to pre-plan your observations. I'm going to tell you my mistake to hopefully make sure you don't make the same mistake. When I was a new teacher, the same center, I started working there when I was 18. And it wasn't until maybe my second year there that the special education teacher came to us and said, you know, why don't you guys start trying an assessment system? This will help you understand how to plan better, and it will help us with some of the documentation that we need to collect when we're writing IEPs and that sort of thing. And so we said, sure, can you bring us an example of an assessment tool? And I have to admit, unlike you all, I was not in an early childhood program in college. I got my AADTA and transferred to a four-year university. And I did not have the background in early childhood education that many of you have. And so for me, this was all like a foreign language. And she brought us this assessment tool. It was, now it's called Gold or Teaching Strategies Gold, but it was the Creative Curriculum Assessment Tool way back when. And it had 50 objectives that we had to observe for, and I didn't know how to do this. I had no clue. And so what I would do, I would sit in the corner of the classroom and I would take notes on everything I saw. I had no way of organizing or sorting or anything. And this changed as we got better at it. And the special education teacher, bless her heart, came and told us, why don't you plan your observations? You know, pick a few of these, and that's what you're going to observe for today. I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? It made my life so much easier. But the issue with our curriculum at that point was, and I'm not going to lie, this is a real thing that we did. And at this point, I was an assistant teacher. And my lead teacher, we're the same age, but she came with some coursework in early childhood education, and she had been a lead teacher at another center from the time she was about 17, I think, which that doesn't happen anymore. She had finished high school early, blah, 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 whatever. And she came with like 2 years lead teacher experience. And so she also came with pre-planned curriculum. She had notebooks for every season that had the lesson plan pre-written. All she had to do was pull it out of her notebook and tack it on the wall, and that is what we did for that week. And she brought all of her resources and materials with her. Homegirl had a system, but we learned that that wasn't individualizing for children, and we were so young and, dare I say it, dumb, that we just were trying to get through our days, right? When you've got these children and you're trying to plan activities, we didn't understand that what we were doing wasn't meaningful and it wasn't individualized. And the special education teacher, I keep mispronouncing that word, helped us understand the importance of individualization. And so we learned how to pre-plan our, that was a whole bird walk, I'm sorry, but we learned how to pre-plan our observations with specific goals in mind. And ever since then, that is how I plan my observations. We observe to facilitate children's growth, right? We watch to see what's happening. If the child, I'm just going to keep using this as my example. If the child is not yet pedaling a tricycle and they're 3, let's observe to find out why, and then let's put in place some activities to help that child meet that goal. We observe to develop and modify instructional goals, right? Especially when we're working with young children, we want to know exactly how to promote their development in appropriate ways, and we only can do that if we've observed them. And we also observe to formally assess children. So if you're working for Head Start, ECAP, Early Head Start, a federally or state-funded home visiting program, you likely have to complete formal assessments on your children, not only to help you design curriculum that is meaningful and individualized, but you're likely reporting children's progress as a part of your grant requirements. All right, so common elements of observations. There's a focus. What do you want to know? Who do you want to observe? What is your purpose? And then the next steps are purposefully gathering the information, recording, so document what you have observed. And there's many ways to document. It could be an anecdotal record. We're going to practice that one. It could be a running record, which means different things in K-12 and early learning. A running record in early learning is where you sit in the corner of the room and you literally write everything you see, that thing that I used to do that was time consuming. But there might be a purpose for it. And then you have to interpret it, right? Reflect on what your observation might mean. So observe, record, interpret. Those are the steps in successfully observing children's development. And here are some tips for unobtrusive observation. So you don't want to interrupt children while they're playing or doing their work. You just want to be able to not interrupt them. So be quiet, watch, and understand. Don't ask their opinion, just observe. Don't suggest, don't contradict or agree with your subject, stay neutral. Your observation needs to be factual and exact. No subjectivity. You don't get to put your own spin on things. You just write what you saw. Collect the information in an unbiased way. So you have to know what your biases are, right? If you're observing boys for social emotional development and you're a girl and you've observed girls for social emotional development, guess what? Boys develop at a different rate and pace. All children do, but if you're expecting boys to act as girls do, you're going to be shocked. And the same is true for girls. Avoid interpretation and relative terms. You're not there yet. If you're observing, you shouldn't be interpreting what's happening yet. Just get everything written down. The facts always make a stronger case than your interpretation or your opinion. So if you have the facts, that is what matters, not your interpretation of what's happening in the moment, just the facts. Observations are a snapshot in time, meaning you might observe something once one day, and then maybe the child can't do that skill again the next day. So you need to observe multiple times. And the more you observe, the more accurate your findings will be. Avoid making assumptions. So let's look at this and decide which statement is correct. Ooh, Annie has difficulty sharing. Annie never shares. I'm just going to give it to you between the eyes. There are issues with both of these statements, right? Annie never shares is subjective. The word difficulty is subjective. So if I were the observer, I would want to write just the facts. And why am I writing something that isn't strengths-based? So there's another issue, right? But if you're a special educator and you're trying to document goals on social progress, you might write something as similar to the first statement, Annie has difficulty sharing. But instead, what I would want to know or note is exactly what happened. Maybe it's Annie took Raoul's book while Raoul was using it. Maybe it's that was Annie's book, Raoul was using it. Instead of asking for the book back, well, that's interpreting too. Annie took her book back from Raoul. I mean, just write what you see. Avoid labels. So which of these statements is correct? Tommy often acts out his aggressive feelings. Tommy is mean. Now, one of these is subjective. Which one do you think is subjective? Now, again, look at the title of the slide, avoid labels. Calling a child mean is labeling them. Tommy often acts out his aggressive feelings. Again, this is something you might write if you're a special educator and you're observing for social development. I, as an observer, would also want to know what exactly that looked like. Tommy hit Jacob with his toy lizard. Or Tommy shouted, "Get out of my way." Like, you'd want to state exactly what happened. Avoid conclusions that you're not qualified to make. Which of these statements is correct? Billy can't do anything by himself because he is the youngest in a large family and they do everything for him. Or Billy needs to develop the ability to do things for himself. Which one are you going to say to a parent, first of all? Are you going to say, well, Billy can't do anything because you do everything for him? What's going to happen if you said that to a parent? They're going to be like, what the heck? Why would you say that? That's so rude, right? So remember, when you're writing these observations, parents are going to read them. They should be able to read anything you write about their child. Take note of that. As a parent, I would much rather hear Billy needs to develop the ability to do things for himself, right? And then talk about ways to do that. That's the appropriate statement. Don't compare children. Dun, dun, dun. If you're a parent, you have done this. I don't care who you are. If you're a parent, you have compared your child to somebody else's. Don't do that. Don't do that in your own classroom. Tommy falls off his bike a lot. Tommy must be backward. He does not ride his bike as well as the other children. First of all, why would you say a child is backward? What does that even mean? And then even just the statement, he does not ride his bike as well as the other children. Again, a parent is going to read this. Do you want them reading that? No. Tommy falls off his bike a lot. You might want to identify why. All right, so this is an exercise, and I'm going to pop this Montessori video into the module, and I want you to watch this. This is going to be your practice. So take out a sheet of paper when you watch and choose a purpose for your observation. Remember when we talked about planning your observations? This is what you're practicing in this practice video. So are you going to practice observing for developmental objectives, content objectives, or behavioral objectives? So choose one. And if you feel like you need to watch the video first and then decide, that's okay too. That's not what happens in real life, right? You don't get to say, play, okay, do that again. You're not going to do that. But if you need to for this experience, feel free. So you're going to do that. You're going to write your first observation. And remember, you want your observation to be factual, no opinion or interpretation in your observation. Keep it concise. It doesn't need to be super wordy. And just write the facts, what you see, what you hear, that's all. And then assessment, I know this is getting to be a longer video, but we're almost there, is something that is concrete and measurable. It meets a set of predetermined standards or concepts, and it measures a specific outcome or ability. And so some of you may actually be familiar with early childhood assessment tools like GOLD or TS Gold or Galileo, High Scope. You may have some experience with those tools already, and you know that they are measuring specific outcomes. So why do we do this? Same reasons that we observe, right? We assess to learn and understand about children, to make decisions about our planning and our teaching, to support planning, identify a child who may need special services, and to share and report to families about the development of their child, and for program evaluation. I have a story. I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of stories. When I was supervising classrooms as an administrator, I had one, and I also was the data reporter. I put together our program's data reports, which were labor intensive and I had to hire a coach to teach me how to do it. That's how intensive it was. I had this teacher who every assessment period, we had 3 assessment periods a year, at the start of the assessment period, so our assessment tool had a 1 to 3 rating at the time. She would rate every single one of her kids a level 1 on every single objective, and there were 50. And then at the end of the assessment period, she would rate them all a 3. And I called this woman into my office to talk about it. I wanted to understand more. And I just said, hey, tell me more about why children are rated a 1, all of them, and all children are rated a 3 at the end. What is it? She got so mad at me, you guys. She was like, why are you questioning my integrity? And I said, well, I just need to understand how every child could be a 1 and then every child be a 3. She stormed off and we were not friends. We were not friends for a long time. And it was a matter of teaching how to observe and how to document and how to assess accurately. But for program evaluation, when you're reviewing those assessments and you see something like that, a pattern, it's problematic. An assessment, sometimes they're standardized. Sometimes you have screening tools. If you work for Head Start or ECAP or Early Head Start, you have likely done a DECA and ESI. A DECA is a social emotional screening tool, and ESI is a developmental screening tool. You may have done those before or something similar. And it's to give you a snapshot of a child's development. We use developmental assessments like TS Gold or Gold. We also do diagnostic tests to maybe assess for specific disabilities. And we also do readiness and achievement tests. Oh, Lordy have mercy. Readiness and achievement tests get under my skin like nobody's business, especially kindergarten readiness tests. Why? What does it mean to be ready for kindergarten? I mean, that's something we could talk about further. All right, so you are going to complete an observation assignment, and I'm going to just talk through this slide. Don't read it. Because you are not going to a classroom to do this assignment, I'm going to provide videos for you, and you are going to observe for physical, intellectual, emotional, and social development. And you're going to use the Washington State Early Learning Guidelines to do this. I'm going to toggle out of here and show you where those are, because they are in the module. Now, I'm still building the modules. Bear with me. Here's the module and what it looks like right now. And you can see this Washington guidelines. If I open this up, if you know what the tree book is and you have a copy of the tree book, that's what we're using for our observation assignment. There it is. This is the PDF version. If you have a hard copy of this, I'm so happy for you. If you don't, you get to scroll through and find the pages that you need. But this is a tool. I'll just scroll down to one of the pages that shows. Sorry, look away. You'll get dizzy if you don't. Really book? Here we go. Gotta wait for it to load. No, you can hear my dog, sorry. Look away. Okay, now we're getting to the meat of this. No, lady. You could read all this. This will help you with your assignment too if you read the beginning. I'm sorry, I didn't think I was gonna scroll this long. Lady, quiet. Can somebody let the dogs out? Thank you. Holy moly. Get to it. Wow, this is taking too long. But what you'll see in this document, on the left-hand side, here we go. On the left, there's sections for each. The first section for each chapter will always be about me and my family and culture. And the sections are all the same for each chapter. It's chaptered by age. So there's infants, older infants, toddlers, preschoolers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and then first grade or kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade in this book. And so I'm going to suggest that you open up to the 3-year-old section and take a look at the section, the parts. And the first part is always about me and my family and culture. And the left-hand column is children may, the right-hand column is ideas to try with children. And so when you're making your observation, maybe think about, okay, what do I want to observe for? Do I want to observe for family and culture and self-concept? Do I want to observe for relationships? Do I want to observe for touching, seeing, hearing, and moving? So that's physical growth and development. Do I want to observe for growing up healthy? You decide, but get to know the section. So I want you to flip to the 3, 4, and 5-year-old sections, pick one, and that's what you're going to be observing for. And I'll even probably tell you this video is for physical development, this video is for intellectual. So you'll know right away where to flip to in your book. But this is the Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines. I'm going to stop here. We've talked enough about observation and assessment. Now we're going to practice. Your assignment this week is to observe and practice writing a anecdotal observation, and there's going to be another video in the assignment instructions that leads you through how to do that. Here's what I need you to know. I don't want you to feel like you have to get it perfect, and that's not what school or practice is about. School and practice is about learning through doing, and sometimes that means making mistakes. And so I'm not grading this. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. I am not grading this for accurateness. If this is the first time that you're doing this, why would I do that to you? I'm grading this for completeness and that you gave it a try. And then my job as your teacher is to give you feedback about how you did and say, you know what, this was subjective. Take this out. You know what, instead I think you're trying to say this. So don't worry about getting it right. Just get your thoughts on paper. And I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, everybody.